Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Two Israeli brothers were shot to death in the West Bank while sitting in their car. The Palestinians celebrated the terrorist attack by handing out sweets.
Well, the murders have sparked riots and violence yesterday. Israeli leaders are calling for calm as the IDF does its job hunting down the terrorists. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports from Jerusalem on this escalating crisis.
The terrorists shot and killed two brothers, Hillel and Yagel Yaniv, as they sat in their car in the Arab town of Huwara, south of Nablus. The brothers were from the nearby Jewish community of Har Bracha, located on the biblical mountain of blessing.
It was a cruel attack. It is heartbreaking to think of the immense pain of the family that lost both its sons, Hillel and Yagel. It is a terrible thing.
Palestinian terrorists have murdered 13 Israelis since the beginning of February. Israeli security forces have carried out a number of deadly counterterrorism operations recently, including last week in Nablus.
We expect difficult days ahead of us. It may be here in Judea and Samaria, in the Jerusalem area, or in the Gaza region.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant visited the site on Monday and says he has given clear instructions to the Israeli security forces.
Ensure readiness to face all threats, reinforce troops and activities on the ground, and most importantly, reach and apprehend the terrorists.
In Huwara, Palestinians celebrated the attack by handing out sweets, but the celebration was short-lived when hundreds of Israelis descended on the town to take revenge, clashing with Palestinians and setting houses, cars, and a junkyard on fire. One Palestinian was reportedly killed. Israeli security forces used tear gas and stun grenades to restore order. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said security forces were pursuing the killer of the brothers and called for calm.
I ask that even when the blood is boiling and the spirit is hot, not to take the law into your hands. I would like to let the IDF and the security forces do their job. I remind you, in the last few weeks, they have eliminated dozens of terrorists and prevented dozens of terrorist attacks.
The attack took place as Israeli and Palestinian authority officials were holding a security summit in Aqaba, Jordan. Jordan called the meeting, which included U.S. and Egyptian officials, in a bid to calm rising tensions ahead of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan 3 weeks from now, when terrorism often ramps up. According to a statement from the Jordanian Foreign Ministry, the two sides agreed to de-escalate the situation. With no end in sight, the Yaniv brothers' mother, Esti, delivered a message to the young people of her community. God sends us grace. Even with this painful blow, he sends us grace. We have a huge hole in our heart. Nothing will ever fill this hole. Not construction, not protests, nothing. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, imagine being the mother of those brothers, and then you hear the report that the Palestinians are celebrating and they're handing out sweets because somebody murdered your sons. You look at this and you just shake your head. Where do you go? If this were to happen, say, on our border with Canada or our border with Mexico, and then we get the report there was some kind of celebration in the streets and they were handing out sweets because Americans were killed, well, our blood would boil, our spirits would get very hot, and there would absolutely be an attack against the perpetrators of this horrible crime. Why would we ever expect Israel to just sort of settle down on this and just sort of accept it, that this is the new normal? It will never be the new normal. Let us remind ourselves of the history here, and the history is quite clear. The Palestinians have refused their own state for decades, going all the way back to 1948. And the famous saying that the Arabs have never refused an opportunity to refuse an opportunity, it holds true today. If they wanted a state of their own, they could have had it. You go back to 1948, they could have had all of Jerusalem. That was offered to them by Ben-Gurion. And to see this ongoing violence and the ongoing cry to drive Israel into the sea and to murder Jews and to celebrate their death, the whole world community needs to wake up to this and say, no more. You can't get away with this anymore. We want to hold you accountable for what you are doing. Well, in other news, the director of the CIA says Iran's nuclear program is growing at a worrisome pace. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. Director William Burns told CBS's Face the Nation that Iran's uranium enrichment program is farther along than expected. Last week, the International Atomic Energy Agency said it's investigating reports that Iran has enriched uranium to 84% purity. That's just short of the 90% needed for a nuclear weapon.
They've advanced very far to the point where it would only be a matter of weeks before they could enrich to 90% if they chose to cross that line. And also in terms of their missile systems, their ability to deliver a nuclear weapon once they developed it has also been advancing as well.
Burns also said Iran is still far from being able to build and test a nuclear bomb. Well, an intelligence report from the Energy Department concluded that the COVID pandemic started with a leak from a Chinese laboratory. The Wall Street Journal reports the agency's conclusion is based on new, undisclosed evidence. The department manages many national labs, including some that perform advanced biological research. The report is at odds with most U.S. intelligence agencies, which believe that COVID came through an infected animal. Only the FBI agrees that it originated mistakenly at a Chinese lab, and the Energy Department reportedly has, quote, low confidence in its conclusion. The United States is warning China that it will face consequences if it sends lethal aid to Russia. Meanwhile, Ukrainians are worried that Western aid could dry up, even as support remains high among people the world over. CBN contributor Chuck Holton reports.
As war grinds into its second year, Ukrainian troops on the front lines near Volodar are resolute, grimly resisting daily Russian attacks in the midst of incredible destruction.
They try to surround us, but they aren't succeeding. We are lucky to have a resourceful commander, so things are going well. I can stay calm knowing we won't be surrounded.
Civilians here are mostly of Russian descent, although that makes no difference to the invaders.
Today is the 9th day since my sister died. We feel bad. We don't know anything. We have no water, nothing. I'm here getting rainwater to wash with.
65 countries, hundreds and hundreds of private companies, and millions of individuals have sent money to support Ukraine over the past year. And believe me, the people here are very grateful for it. But they are concerned that the world will just move on, and they know that that aid is absolutely vital to their survival as this war goes into its second year. And that's why they've taken so much hope from the commemorations and marches that they saw around the world over the one-year anniversary. From Argentina to Armenia, Berlin to Brazil, and Warsaw to Washington, D.C., hundreds of cities held vigils protesting the war as it enters its second year. Standing with Ukraine and against Vladimir Putin, many of those involved are Russian.
Well, what we have here is Russians protesting against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. These are people in the opposition to Putin. Everybody talks about how the Russians are brainwashed. These people aren't brainwashed. These are Russian citizens, Russian emigres who are saying that Putin's murderous war in Ukraine is not okay. That's a very important thing to be seeing right now.
If Ukrainians will stop to fight, there will be no Ukraine. And European Union will have the border with Russia. And then maybe you will need to fight. If Russia will stop to fight now, there will be no war.
Marina Litvinenko's husband was killed by Russian agents in 2006.
I'm very proud to see this big crowd of Russian people. A lot of young people maybe never went to this kind of protest. But I saw their faces, how they're against the war, how they support Ukraine, how they hate Putin.
This really tells you how upset everybody is, how upset real Russian people are about the murder that's going on in Ukraine right now.
This global swell is very motivating for those who have spent the past year on the front lines.
We fight for our children, for our fellow Ukrainians, and for our nation. Because I think what Russia is doing now is genocide. And Ukrainians don't have any choice but to win. That's why we fight till the end. Glory to Ukraine.
From Kyiv, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Thank you, Chuck. Turning to southern Turkey, where another aftershock shook the area today, damaging buildings and killing at least one person. Despite the danger, groups like CBN's Operation Blessing and others continue to serve in the quake zone. CBN's Brody Carter reports from Antakya.
To the church, we're standing on holy ground. walking towards the Church of St. Pierre. Unfortunately, it's closed due to the earthquake. It overlooks the city of Antakya, biblically, the city of Antioch. In the shadow, families forced to live in conditions that no one should endure.
I'd say these people are hurting in a way that most of us don't understand. They're wounded, they're traumatized, they're heartbroken, they've lost houses.
A main priority is providing shelter for so many left homeless. The Turkish government and nonprofits are putting up tents in cities, some near homes still waiting to fall. Tents have definitely been a godsend for the people impacted by the earthquake here in Turkey, but they only last for so long, especially with sanitation issues, likely up to 3 months, and then they need long-term housing.
We make these homes primarily with plywood. We source the material here in Turkey.
Kurt Miller owns a coffee shop in Istanbul. He saw the need for long-term housing and answered the call.
First off, tents, they're short-term. It's a terrible living condition, and it can only last for, maybe a couple months best.
Miller is working with churches across the region of Hatay, giving jobs and hope to those people with nothing left.
We need to pull tight, push down.
This is the 10th home built by volunteers across 4 cities. While they're meant to last for roughly 2 years, it's estimated Turkey will use them up to 10.
That's why Operation Blessing show up, to be a little drop in the ocean, but is meaningful.
Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Director Diego Traverso knows how far financial support can go in these situations. In this Hatay village, his team is feeding people and helping those suffering from post-traumatic stress.
We want to spend time. We want to invest in them. We want to love them. Yes. That's what we are.
The United Nations estimates the earthquake affected some 20 million people across 200 miles of devastation. Early projections say highly damaged cities will take at least 5 years to recover and rebuild.
The amount of trauma in the land doesn't go away overnight. And the longer we can be here to love and care for these people, the better. And that happens with people being aware and stepping in and backing these organizations as we go.
Reporting in Antakya, Turkey, Brody Carter, CBN News.
And Gordon, that PTSD exacerbated by the fact that there have been over close to 10,000 aftershocks.
And it's exacerbated by the fact that they don't have enough food, they don't have shelter, they don't have a way to stay warm, water is at risk, all of these things combining to continue to harm people. The scope of this is absolutely unimaginable. It's 300 miles of devastation. It's absolutely incredible to think of. But in the face of that, what can we do? How can we help, even in a small part, to help those people as they try to recover from these horrible earthquakes? If you want to be a part of it, it's real simple. Pick up a phone and call us. 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. That's the fund that continues to supply for the Ukrainian refugees in Poland. It continues to supply for people who have suffered from natural disasters right here at home, whether that's in Florida or in Kentucky, the Philippines. We want to reach out with hands of love and compassion to people in their time of need. Our particular focus right now is on Turkey. We're getting ready to swap out the current team, bring in other teams to help, and you can be a part of it. It's real simple. Call us, 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can also go to CBN.com. There's a place where you can designate your gift on the website, and your gift will go to disaster relief. It's a designated fund, so do it right now. 1-800-700-7000.